Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today, we are traveling back in time to the year 1600 to explore one of the most fascinating cities in the world, Venice. Before we begin, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us create more historical content for you. Also, tell us in the comments which city you would like us to visit in our next journey through history. Now, let's step back more than 400 years and discover Venice at the beginning of the 17th century. Imagine a city unlike any other in Europe. Instead of streets filled with horses and carts, there are canals filled with boats. Instead of roads connecting neighborhoods, there are waterways crossing the city. Beautiful palaces rise from the water, and merchants from many lands speak different languages in the busy markets. This is Venice in the year 1600. At that time, Venice was one of the richest and most powerful cities in Europe. It was the capital of the Republic of Venice, an independent state that had existed for many centuries. Venetian ships traveled across the Mediterranean Sea and beyond, bringing goods, ideas, and people from different parts of the world. The city was built on more than 100 small islands connected by hundreds of bridges. The people of Venice had learned how to build strong foundations in the muddy lagoon. Their engineering skills allowed them to create a city that seemed to float on water. For visitors arriving by ship, Venice looked magical. Tall church towers rose above the skyline. Grand palaces lined the canals. Colorful boats moved through the water day and night. The city was busy, crowded, and full of life. Let us begin by looking at everyday life in Venice. The population of Venice around the year 1600 was approximately 140,000 to 150,000 people. This made it one of the largest cities in Europe. People from different social classes lived there, from wealthy nobles to poor workers. The wealthy families often lived in large palaces along the Grand Canal. These homes were decorated with paintings, fine furniture, and expensive fabrics. Many noble families had become rich through trade and business. The middle classes included merchants, shop owners, craftsmen, sailors, and government officials. They formed an important part of Venetian society and helped keep the city prosperous. At the lower end of society were laborers, servants, dock workers, and poor families. Life could be difficult for them, especially during times of disease or economic trouble. Despite social differences, the city brought people together in markets, churches, festivals, and public squares. A typical day in Venice began early. Merchants prepared their shops. Fishermen returned from the lagoon with fresh catches. Bakers opened their ovens and filled the air with the smell of bread. Boats carried goods through the canals, while workers unloaded cargo from ships arriving from distant lands. The canals served as the city's main transportation system. Gondolas moved passengers from place to place. Larger boats carried food, building materials, and trade goods. Because Venice had very few roads, almost everything depended on water transport. The famous gondola already existed in 1600. Wealthy citizens often used these elegant boats to travel across the city. Gondoliers became skilled experts at navigating the narrow waterways. Food played an important role in Venetian life. Because Venice was a maritime city, fish and seafood were common foods. People also ate bread, vegetables, fruits, cheese, and meat when they could afford it. Trade connections allowed Venice to import spices from the east. Pepper, cinnamon, cloves, and other exotic spices were highly valued. Wealthy families often used these ingredients to create impressive meals. The city's markets were among the busiest places in Venice. One of the most famous was the Rialto market. Merchants sold fish, fruits, vegetables, fabrics, and imported goods. People gathered there not only to shop, but also to exchange news and discuss business. Religion was another important part of daily life. Most Venetians were Roman Catholics. Churches were central to community life. People attended religious services, celebrated religious holidays, and participated in public ceremonies. The magnificent Basilica of St. Mark stood at the heart of the city. It was one of the most important buildings in Venice and symbolized the city's wealth and power. Festivals brought excitement throughout the year. Venetians loved celebrations, music, and public events. Religious festivals, civic ceremonies, and seasonal celebrations filled the calendar. One of the most famous traditions was the Carnival of Venice. During Carnival, people wore masks and costumes. Music, dancing, and performances transformed the city into a grand stage. Masks became an important symbol of Venice. They allowed people from different social classes to mix more freely and enjoy the festivities together. Art was everywhere in Venice. Beautiful paintings decorated churches, palaces, and public buildings. Wealthy families often hired artists to create portraits and religious works. The city was known throughout Europe for its artistic achievements. Venetian painters used rich colors and dramatic effects that influenced generations of artists. At sunset, the city took on a special beauty. The light reflected from the water onto the buildings. Church bells echoed across the canals. Boats continued moving through the waterways as merchants finished their work and families gathered for evening meals. Life in Venice was not always easy. Fires, floods, and diseases sometimes threatened the city. Yet Venice remained strong because of its wealth, organization, and strategic location. For many travelers, Venice seemed like a wonder of the world. It was a city of merchants, sailors, artists, craftsmen, nobles, and workers. It connected Europe with the Eastern Mediterranean and served as a meeting place for cultures from many regions. Now, let us discover how the people of Venice worked, studied, traded, and built one of the most successful economies in the world of their time. If there was one thing that made Venice famous across Europe and beyond, it was trade. For centuries, Venice had connected east and west. Ships sailed from Venetian ports carrying goods to and from distant lands. Merchants traveled across the Mediterranean Sea, reaching cities in North Africa, the Middle East, and many parts of Europe. Even though the great age of Venetian dominance was slowly beginning to face challenges from new ocean routes, Venice in 1600 was still one of the most important trading centers in the world. Every day, ships entered and left the Venetian lagoon. Some carried spices from Asia. Others transported silk, cotton, precious metals, glass, wine, timber, and many other products. The docks were always busy. Sailors unloaded cargo while merchants checked inventories and negotiated prices. The Venetian economy depended on these trading networks. Many families earned their wealth through commerce. Successful merchants could become extremely rich. Some built magnificent palaces along the canals to display their success. Wealth from trade supported artists, architects, scholars, and public projects throughout the city. The heart of commercial life was the area around the Rialto Bridge. This district was filled with shops, warehouses, offices, and markets. Merchants gathered there every day to buy and sell goods. Business deals were discussed in public spaces, and information traveled quickly among traders. Knowledge was one of the most valuable resources in Venice. A merchant who knew about changing prices, political events, or shipping conditions could make better decisions than his competitors. For this reason, information moved through the city almost as quickly as goods. Venetian merchants were skilled organizers. They kept detailed records of transactions and investments. Many understood accounting methods that helped them manage large trading operations. Some invested in several voyages at once, reducing the risks of losing money if a ship failed to reach its destination. Not everyone worked in international trade. Many citizens earned their living through crafts and local industries. Venice was famous for the quality of its manufactured products. One of the city's most celebrated industries was glassmaking. On the nearby island of Murano, skilled craftsmen produced glass that was admired throughout Europe. Venetian glassmakers developed techniques that were considered secrets. Their products included mirrors, drinking vessels, decorative objects, and elegant works of art. The government protected these trade secrets carefully. Skilled glassmakers were highly respected because their knowledge contributed greatly to the city's wealth and reputation. Shipbuilding was another major industry. The Venetian arsenal was one of the largest industrial complexes in the world at that time. Thousands of workers were employed there. They built warships, merchant vessels, and other boats needed for trade and defense. Visitors were often amazed by the efficiency of the arsenal. Workers specialized in different tasks, allowing ships to be constructed more quickly than in many other places. Some historians even compare certain aspects of the arsenal's organization to early forms of industrial production. The arsenal provided employment for carpenters, blacksmiths, rope makers, sail makers, and many other skilled workers. Entire families depended on the shipbuilding industry for their livelihoods. Textile production also played an important role in the economy. Weavers, dyers, tailors, and cloth merchants supplied both local and international markets. Fine fabrics were valuable products that could be traded across long distances. Guilds helped organize many professions. A guild was an association of people working in the same trade. Bakers had guilds. Carpenters had guilds. Glassmakers had guilds. Many other occupations had their own organizations as well. Guilds established standards for quality, training, and business practices. They protected the interests of their members and ensured that skills were passed from one generation to the next. For young people, learning a trade often began through apprenticeship. A boy might spend several years working under an experienced craftsman. During this period, he learned the skills of the profession while helping with daily work. Over time, he gained experience and eventually became a skilled worker himself. Education in Venice reflected the city's commercial and cultural importance. Wealthy families often hired private tutors for their children. These tutors taught reading, writing, mathematics, history, religion, and languages. Knowledge of languages was especially useful because Venice interacted with many different cultures and trading partners. Schools also existed for other social groups. While educational opportunities were not equal for everyone, Venice offered more possibilities for learning than many smaller European towns. Mathematics was particularly important because of commerce. Merchants needed to calculate profits, exchange currencies, measure goods, and manage accounts. Practical mathematics became an essential skill for people involved in business. Reading and writing were valuable abilities as well. Business contracts, letters, inventories, and financial records required literacy. As a result, many people involved in commerce recognized the importance of education. Books played a significant role in Venetian society. By 1600, Venice had become one of Europe's leading centers of printing and publishing. Printing presses produced religious texts, scientific works, literature, maps, and educational materials. Books printed in Venice traveled across Europe and contributed to the spread of knowledge. Scholars and students benefited from easier access to information than previous generations had enjoyed. Libraries and private collections grew during this period. Wealthy individuals often collected books as symbols of learning and status. Some scholars spent years studying ancient texts and new discoveries. The city also attracted visitors from many countries. Merchants arrived seeking business opportunities. Diplomats represented foreign governments. Students came to learn. Travelers wanted to see the famous city built upon the water. This constant movement of people helped create an atmosphere of exchange and curiosity. New ideas entered Venice from different parts of the world, while Venetian knowledge spread outward through trade and communication. Women participated in economic life as well, although opportunities were often more limited than those available to men. Some women managed businesses, worked in family enterprises, produced textiles, or engaged in trade. Widows sometimes inherited commercial responsibilities and continued operating businesses successfully. Despite its prosperity, Venice also faced challenges. Competition from Atlantic trading powers such as England, Spain, and the Dutch Republic was increasing. New ocean routes allowed some goods to bypass traditional Mediterranean networks. These changes slowly affected Venice's position in global commerce. However, in 1600 the city remained wealthy, influential, and highly respected. Its merchants still controlled valuable trading connections, and its industries continued producing goods sought throughout Europe. The people of Venice understood that success required hard work, skill, and adaptability. Sailors faced storms at sea. Merchants accepted financial risks. Craftsmen spent years mastering difficult techniques. Teachers and scholars worked to preserve and expand knowledge. Together, these efforts created a city that stood among the great urban centers of the world. Venice was not merely a place of beautiful canals and elegant buildings. It was a city powered by human effort, organization, innovation, and learning. Every ship launched from the arsenal, every glass vessel produced in Murano, every book printed by Venetian presses, and every lesson taught in a classroom contributed to the strength of the Republic. As the 17th century began, Venice remained a remarkable example of what trade, education, craftsmanship, and cooperation could achieve. Behind the beauty that visitors admired stood thousands of workers, merchants, teachers, apprentices, and craftsmen whose daily labor kept the city alive and prosperous. So far, we have discovered the daily lives of the people and the economic power that made Venice one of the greatest cities in Europe. Now, we turn to another side of Venetian society, its world of knowledge, ideas, literature, science, art, and philosophy. When people think about Venice, they often imagine canals, gondolas, and merchants. Yet Venice was also a city of learning. It was a place where books were printed, ideas were exchanged, and scholars from different regions came together. The city stood at a crossroads between cultures, and this position allowed knowledge from many parts of the world to flow through its streets. By the year 1600, Europe was experiencing a period of intellectual change. New discoveries were challenging old beliefs. Scientists were observing nature in new ways. Philosophers were debating important questions about humanity, knowledge, and society. Venice participated actively in this broader movement. One of the greatest advantages Venice possessed was its connection to the world. Ships arriving from distant ports brought more than goods. They also brought stories, ideas, books, maps, and scientific information. Merchants who traveled widely often returned with knowledge of foreign cultures and technologies. Printing played a major role in spreading this knowledge. Venice had become one of the most important printing centers in Europe. Hundreds of books were produced by Venetian printers and sold across the continent. Religious works, classical texts, scientific studies, histories, poetry, and philosophical writings all passed through the city's printing houses. The availability of printed books allowed ideas to travel faster than ever before. Scholars could read works written in other countries. Students could study subjects that would have been difficult to access in earlier centuries. Readers gained opportunities to explore different perspectives and expand their understanding of the world. Among the most famous figures associated with Venetian publishing was Aldus Manutius, who had lived in an earlier period but whose influence remained strong by 1600. His printing innovations helped transform the way books were produced and read throughout Europe. The publishing traditions he helped establish continued to benefit Venice long after his death. Education and scholarship were respected in Venetian society. Wealthy families often encouraged their children to study languages, history, literature, mathematics, and philosophy. Knowledge was seen not only as a practical tool, but also as a mark of culture and refinement. Latin remained an important language among educated people. Scholars used it to communicate across national boundaries. At the same time, literature written in Italian became increasingly popular and accessible. Poetry occupied a special place in Venetian culture. Poets wrote about love, beauty, religion, politics, and human experience. Their works were read in homes, discussed among intellectuals, and shared through printed publications. Literature provided entertainment, but it also encouraged reflection on life and society. Writers in Venice benefited from living in a city connected to many different traditions. Influences from classical Greece and Rome mixed with ideas arriving from across Europe and the Mediterranean world. This cultural diversity enriched literary life and encouraged creativity. The theater was another important aspect of Venetian culture. Public performances attracted audiences from different social classes. People gathered to watch dramas, comedies, and musical productions. These performances offered entertainment while also exploring social issues, human behavior, and moral questions. Music flourished throughout the city as well. Venice was famous for its musical traditions. Churches, especially St. Mark's Basilica, became centers of musical innovation. Composers experimented with new styles and techniques, creating works that impressed visitors from across Europe. The sounds of music filled many parts of the city. Religious ceremonies featured choirs and instruments. Public celebrations included performances and concerts. Wealthy families sometimes sponsored musicians and hosted private events in their homes. One of the most influential composers associated with Venice during this era was Giovanni Gabrieli. His music demonstrated the city's creative energy and helped shape the development of European musical traditions. His compositions were admired not only in Venice, but also in many other regions. Art remained one of Venice's greatest achievements. Although the famous painter Titian had died several decades earlier, his legacy continued to influence artists throughout the city. Venetian painting was known for its rich colors, dramatic lighting, and attention to atmosphere. Artists decorated churches, public buildings, and private palaces. Paintings often depicted religious subjects, historical events, portraits, and scenes from mythology. Wealthy patrons commissioned works to display their status, faith, and cultural sophistication. Young artists studied the masterpieces of earlier generations while developing their own styles. The artistic traditions established during the Renaissance remained strong and continued to attract admiration from across Europe. Science was also undergoing significant changes during this period. For centuries, many people had relied heavily on ancient authorities for explanations about nature. By 1600, however, increasing numbers of scholars believed that observation and experimentation could reveal new truths about the world. Venice became connected to these developments through its scholars, printers, and universities nearby. Intellectuals followed scientific debates with great interest. New ideas about astronomy, physics, medicine, and geography circulated among educated circles. One of the most important scientific figures associated with the Venetian Republic was Galileo Galilei. Although he spent much of his career in nearby Padua, which was under Venetian control, his work had a profound influence on the intellectual life of the region. Galileo encouraged people to observe nature carefully and test ideas through evidence. His studies of motion, mathematics, and astronomy helped transform scientific thinking. In 1609, only a few years after the period we are exploring, Galileo would improve the telescope and make observations that changed humanity's understanding of the universe. The intellectual atmosphere that supported such work was strengthened by Venice's relative openness to new ideas. While disagreements and limitations certainly existed, the Republic often provided scholars with opportunities to pursue research and discussion. Medicine also advanced during this period. Doctors sought to improve their understanding of the human body and disease. Medical knowledge combined ancient traditions with new observations. Hospitals and charitable institutions cared for the sick, although treatments were often limited by the scientific knowledge available at the time. The study of geography held particular importance in Venice. As a maritime republic, Venice depended on accurate maps and navigational information. Cartographers created detailed charts to assist sailors and merchants. Knowledge of distant lands had practical value for trade, exploration, and diplomacy. Philosophy remained a respected field of study as well. Philosophers examined questions about ethics, government, religion, and human nature. They debated how societies should be organized and how individuals should live meaningful lives. The government of Venice itself attracted attention from political thinkers. The Republic had developed a unique political system that combined elements of aristocratic rule with complex institutions designed to balance power. Many observers viewed Venice as one of the most stable states in Europe. Intellectual discussions often took place in homes, academies, and social gatherings. Educated citizens exchanged opinions on literature, politics, religion, and science. These conversations helped create a vibrant cultural environment. The diversity of Venice contributed greatly to its intellectual strength. People from different backgrounds interacted regularly. Merchants, diplomats, artists, scholars, sailors, and travelers brought varied experiences and perspectives. This mixture encouraged curiosity and broadened horizons. For visitors arriving in Venice around 1600, the city offered much more than commercial opportunity. It offered access to books, music, art, ideas, and cultural experiences that could be difficult to find elsewhere. The intellectual achievements of Venice did not emerge by accident. They were the result of centuries of investment in education, publishing, artistic patronage, and international connections. The city understood that knowledge could be as valuable as gold, and that ideas could shape the future just as surely as trade or military power. As the 17th century began, Venice remained a center of culture admired throughout Europe. Its writers inspired readers, its musicians influenced composers, its artists created masterpieces, and its scholars contributed to the growing body of human knowledge. During this series, we have explored daily life, commerce, education, science, literature, and culture. Now, in this final chapter, we will look at the wider civilization of Venice, its political system, its achievements, its challenges, and the legacy that made it one of the most remarkable cities in world history. By the beginning of the 17th century, Venice had already existed as an independent republic for many hundreds of years. Few governments in Europe could claim such continuity and stability. While kingdoms rose and fell, dynasties changed, and wars transformed borders, Venice maintained a political system that many observers considered both unique and effective. The city was governed by a complex network of institutions designed to prevent any single person from gaining too much power. At the center of this system stood the Doge, the ceremonial leader of the republic. Although the Doge was respected and honored, his authority was limited by councils and government bodies that shared responsibility for decision-making. This balance of power helped Venice avoid some of the political instability that affected other states. Decisions often required consultation and cooperation among different groups of leaders. While the system was not democratic in the modern sense, it created a degree of continuity that contributed to the republic's long survival. The Venetian government paid close attention to administration and organization. Officials monitored trade, managed public works, supervised defenses, and maintained diplomatic relations with foreign powers. Efficient administration became one of the foundations of Venetian success. Diplomacy was particularly important. Venice occupied a strategic position between Europe and the Eastern Mediterranean. To protect its interests, the Republic maintained relationships with many different states. Venetian ambassadors traveled across Europe and beyond, gathering information and representing the Republic's concerns. These diplomatic networks allowed Venice to remain informed about international events. Reports sent by ambassadors helped leaders understand political developments, economic opportunities, and potential threats. Information became a valuable resource, and Venice developed one of the most respected diplomatic traditions of its age. The city's physical appearance reflected centuries of wealth and achievement. Visitors arriving in Venice often described it as one of the most beautiful places they had ever seen. Grand palaces lined the canals. Churches displayed impressive architecture and decoration. Public squares provided gathering places for citizens and visitors alike. The city seemed almost impossible. Built upon islands in a lagoon, Venice had overcome challenges that might have defeated other communities. Generations of engineers, builders, and laborers had transformed a difficult environment into a thriving urban center. Wooden foundations driven deep into the muddy ground supported massive buildings. Stone structures rose above the water. Bridges connected neighborhoods, while canals served as transportation routes. The entire city represented a remarkable achievement of human ingenuity and determination. Technology and practical knowledge played important roles in this success. Venetians continuously improved techniques for construction, navigation, shipbuilding, and manufacturing. Their engineers developed solutions to problems created by the lagoon environment. Their sailors mastered maritime skills that allowed them to travel great distances. Their craftsmen refined methods that produced goods admired throughout Europe. The arsenal remained one of the greatest symbols of Venetian innovation. Thousands of workers collaborated in the construction and maintenance of ships. The organization of labor within the arsenal impressed visitors from many countries. Its efficiency demonstrated the Republic's ability to coordinate large-scale projects. At the same time, Venice continued investing in public infrastructure. Waterways required maintenance. Buildings needed repair. Defenses had to be strengthened. Government officials understood that preserving the city's prosperity depended upon constant attention to practical needs. Yet despite all its achievements, Venice faced important challenges as the 17th century began. The world was changing. New trade routes across the Atlantic Ocean had shifted some economic activity away from the Mediterranean. Emerging powers such as England and the Dutch Republic were expanding their influence. Competition increased in international markets. Venice could no longer dominate trade as completely as it had during earlier centuries. The Republic needed to adapt to new circumstances while protecting its traditional strengths. Military challenges also existed. The Ottoman Empire remained a powerful force in the Eastern Mediterranean. Political tensions and conflicts sometimes threatened Venetian interests. Defending trade routes and overseas territories required significant resources and careful planning. Disease presented another danger. Like many cities of the era, Venice periodically suffered outbreaks of plague and other illnesses. Epidemics could reduce the population, disrupt economic activity, and create widespread fear. Public authorities worked to manage these crises using the medical knowledge available at the time. Environmental challenges were constant as well. The lagoon that protected Venice also required careful management. Flooding, erosion, and changes in waterways demanded ongoing attention. Maintaining the delicate balance between city and environment became a permanent responsibility. Despite these difficulties, Venice remained resilient. The Republic had survived numerous crises throughout its history. Its leaders understood the importance of adaptation, planning, and cooperation. Citizens continued working, trading, studying, creating art, and building upon the achievements of previous generations. Perhaps one of the most remarkable aspects of Venice was its ability to combine tradition with innovation. The city respected its history and institutions, yet it also embraced new ideas when they offered practical advantages. This balance helped Venice remain relevant in a changing world. Its cultural influence extended far beyond its borders. Artists carried Venetian techniques to other regions. Printed books spread knowledge across Europe. Musicians inspired new forms of composition. Merchants connected distant societies through trade. Diplomats influenced international relations. Scholars contributed to intellectual developments that shaped the future. In many ways, Venice served as a bridge. It connected East and West. It linked medieval traditions with emerging modern ideas. It brought together people from different languages, religions, and cultures. This role as a meeting place enriched both the city itself and the wider world. The legacy of Venice can still be seen today. Many of the buildings standing in modern Venice were already part of the city's landscape in 1600. The canals continue to define its identity. Visitors from around the world still admire its architecture, art, and history. The achievements of Venetian artists remain celebrated in museums and galleries. The music of Venetian composers continues to be performed. Historical records created by Venetian officials provide valuable information for researchers. Architectural innovations developed in the Republic continue to inspire admiration. When we look back at Venice in the year 1600, we see much more than a beautiful city. We see a civilization. We see merchants crossing seas in search of opportunity. We see craftsmen transforming raw materials into objects of beauty. We see scholars studying books and exchanging ideas. We see sailors navigating distant waters. We see artists creating masterpieces and musicians composing works that would outlive them by centuries. We see a society that valued knowledge, organization, creativity, and ambition. Of course, Venice was not perfect. Social inequalities existed. Political power was concentrated in the hands of elites. Many people faced hardships and uncertainties. Yet the city achieved extraordinary things through the combined efforts of countless individuals across generations. Its story reminds us that great civilizations are built not only by rulers and famous figures, but also by ordinary people. Workers, teachers, sailors, printers, builders, merchants, and craftsmen all contributed to the success of Venice. Together, they created a city that became one of the wonders of its age. As the sun set over the lagoon in the year 1600, the bells of churches echoed across the water. Gondolas moved through quiet canals. Merchants reviewed their accounts. Scholars read by candlelight. Shipbuilders prepared for another day of work. Musicians practiced their art. Families gathered in homes overlooking the waterways. Life continued in a city unlike any other on Earth. And although more than 4 centuries have passed since then, the story of Venice still captures the imagination of people around the world. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Venice in the year 1600. If you enjoyed this historical adventure, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more journeys into the past. And don't forget to leave a comment telling us which city you would like us to explore next. Until our next journey through history, thank you for watching and goodbye.